And for Mexico, this stadium is very much a second home. It's their 10th game here this season, and some 2 million Mexicans live in the Los Angeles area. Not all of them, I should add, here officially. An immigrant community from which to draw their support, and there is, as you can see, plenty of support here. This stadium, which staged the 1984 Olympic Games, of course, holds 92,000, so there will understandably be some gaps, but we estimate certainly more than 50,000 attracted by a match that has great relevance for the World Cup battles ahead. It's a case of the World Cup countdown continuing, and the added significance, if both teams finish second in their World Cup groups, they will meet in the second round, a knockout stage for a place in the quarterfinals. We're underway here in Los Angeles. England wearing their squad numbers, so you can get used to those. They're the numbers you will see in Mexico. But you can also see on the far side that strip of a carpet-like material which is inside the playing area and covering the run-up to what was the pole vault pit. It's not going to be easy for the players on that far side, and Mexico have an early corner conceded by Terry Butcher. Negrete has gone across to take it. Flores right in front of the goalkeeper. And Hermosillo was jumping. It's another corner. Peter Shilton has stayed on his line. Sansom guarding the near post, Ray Wilkins the other post, and Viv Anderson dealing with the danger before the ball reached Shilton. Apart from that strange strip on the far side, the pitch is in reasonable condition, although they are saying here that it will be dug up after this game. That was a handball by Fenech, although he looked to be pushed onto it. The Mexican players, I'm sure you're aware of by now, have been together virtually as a club side for a year. Tremendous understanding in their team play, but they're missing Thomas Boyd's skill at set pieces. It's Negrete who takes. And Negrete again, the number 22. It very much favours the left foot, but not a bad ball with the right. Just looking a little tentative in this opening phase. The bounce beating Hakely. Good atmosphere in the stadium, and we understand that there are still plenty of people outside trying to get in, perhaps caught by surprise at the demand here, where traditionally even the games played by Mexico haven't drawn such big crowds. Aguirre, who's the acting captain. And Fenech lost out to Hermosillo. The first chance is Mexico's, and it's wasted initially by Hermosillo. Kept in play by Flores. And Fenech was beaten by the timing of the pass. Flores retrieved it, but it was the tall 6'1" Hermosillo, who came on as a substitute against England in the Aztec Stadium last summer, who caused the problems. Anderson gets his head to it. Here's Peter Beardsley, who's played here before in the colours of Vancouver Whitecaps in the now defunct North American Soccer League. But Hermosillo, having got clear, dragged his shot well wide. Bobby Robson stressing that England places are still up for grabs. So a lot on this match for his team. I think Mexico are more settled in their lineup. Beardsley, who's made, of course, a late charge to get in the 22 at the expense of Trevor Francis. Linking up with Hoddle was Viv Anderson, and Haitley unable to get off the ground because he was nudged at a crucial moment rather cleverly by Trejo. The Mexicans, not the tallest of teams. They were saying more last summer that they feared Haitley in the air. They're playing that down this time. And Kenny Sansom was saying, as Terry Butcher retrieves the ball, that if he treads on that strip there, it'll look even shorter than ever. There's certainly a dip, and with World Cup injuries, of course, potentially catastrophic at this stage, it's not something that England really looked at with great happiness when they arrived here about an hour and a half before the kickoff. Sansom. Neat control from Beardsley. Brian Robson, a breakdown in communications with Hoddle. Aguirre. Mexico like to play with a packed midfield, sometimes as many as 5 players in that department, but 3 of them are charged with responsibility to get forward. Still people coming into the stadium, and when you think there's a counter-attraction across town of a major baseball occasion, the Los Angeles Dodgers against the high-flying New York Mets, that's live on local television. And the weather, the best it's been for a couple of weeks, so I'm told. The freeways to the Southern Californian beaches were jammed this morning. Negrete. Here's Aguirre. Hoddle chasing back. Sevin. Manso. And his mistake, putting Beardsley in possession, the sort of run at defenders that Peter Beardsley enjoys, but he needs help now. It comes from Hoddle, and Haitley coming in. An early cross that he would have appreciated. But the American referee, Vincent Mauro, had a good look at Haitley's jump. The crowd basking in the sunshine, and this was the goalmouth action that they saw after the mistake by Manso. A lovely early ball by Hoddle, who's been praised by Bobby Robson for his passing this week. Haitley, I think, was guilty of an infringement as he went for the header. Viv Anderson at right back, with Gary Stevens, one of the Everton players, left behind to acclimatise, and that nearly dropped for Flores, left behind in Colorado Springs, along with Peter Reid and Gary Lineker. But Trevor Steven is here, and Flores, after Beardsley had inaccurately looked to lay the ball off and only found the top Mexican striker, Flores tried to take the shot early. Negrete. Sevin, challenged by Haitley. It's warm here, but remember, it'll be even warmer when England get to Monterrey. So it's a useful workout in that respect. Here's Anderson. Haitley coming for the ball played to feet. Beardsley had gone beyond him. And the foul by Sevin. Referee Mauro, an American citizen, but actually born in Italy. So the game is certainly in his blood. Ray Wilkins. Robson had made the forward run in characteristic fashion. Negrete. This is Flores. The target, Hermosillo, and Butcher in the way for England. Quite a contrast, the attendance, to the mere 10,000 who watched England play the United States here last year. Larios, the goalkeeper. Negrete is already finding space in midfield, but dispossessed there by Waddle. And evidence of useful understanding involving Beardsley for England. Robson waiting in the middle. Servine cut out the cross. So it's sunglasses and tans now on the England bench. And Bobby Robson caught up, he says, very much in the World Cup fever, but I'm sure you're feeling back at home. And Robson coming in on Sansom's long throw, and he'll be able to throw that even further in the rarefied Mexican air. So too will Everton's Gary Stevens, the two long throw England specialists. Wilkins with the corner. Butcher waiting at the near post. Wilkins can try again. The goalkeeper Larios caught absolutely everything against England last season. He's been recalled to the side because of that. Butcher tries to guide it on, and Espana can only put it out of play. Beardsley with a sure touch that finds Wilkins. And the goalkeeper with the fist this time to deny Hakely. No foul as Flores went down under challenge from Anderson. And then Waddle losing out to Munoz, who's the anchor man in midfield, wearing number 16. No team, I think, in World Cup history has had the benefit of the preparation that the Mexicans have had. An entire season away from their clubs. But that in itself will put extra pressure on the players when they get home. So much is expected of them. And they don't take failure lightly in Mexico, judging by what happened when the team lost badly in the finals in 1978. Here's Butcher. Anderson. Wilkins finding space. Hoddle. Handball. By Munoz. In that position in front of his back four. Well, in their training camp, England have had the opportunity to work on their set plays, much more so than for internationals in the course of a normal season. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with here. Hoddle placing the ball. Wilkins in attendance. And Robson lurking slightly to the left. And Sansom perhaps poised for a late arrival. But it's set up for Hoddle, and the goalkeeper perhaps making a meal of the save. Larios very much in the right position for it, flinging his legs back spectacularly to help it over the top. He'd been disappointed if that had gone in. But Hoddle on target, and credit for that. And Larios comes again. Hoddle, Hakely, and In fact, a free kick for dangerous play. Glenn Hoddle raised the foot. Well, you do sense that if Glenn Hoddle has a good World Cup, so too will England. Coming up to the 15-minute mark if you've just come in. No goals as yet, but a bright start by England in a match that clearly has purpose to it and is not just a training exercise. Negrete again looking to use that left foot, and Sansom stumbled. Well, Chris Waddle, who would be inconvenienced on the far side by that strip of carpet inside the playing area, remember, trying his luck now on the right. There's no basic change to the England philosophy, although there was a change there of the ball. Bobby Robson still going for the three-man midfield and a front line of a big man, Hakely, a sharp man who today is Beardsley, and a wide player in Waddle. Here's Servine, a left back who enjoys getting forward. And Mosilio. Hoddle given no time to settle, nor to Anderson. And a disagreement, I think, between referee and linesman. The linesman pointed for a Mexican throw, and as you can see, the referee overruled him. Hakely. There were doubts about Mark Hakely's fitness for this game. He tweaked a hamstring in a training game against South Korea on Wednesday, and to all intents and purposes had been ruled out by Thursday evening. But his recovery has been swift, and Kerry Dixon, who I think was licking his lips with the anticipation of another chance, is confined to waiting on the bench. Negrete. Munoz. Now Aguirre. Mexico trying to keep their possession in midfield and draw England out. Terry Fenwick saying to me before the game that sometimes it is a problem when you don't actually have somebody to mark. He's picking up Negrete at the moment, and Negrete stole a yard on him. But Fenwick was there, but only after some obstruction by Anderson. And England's marking is slack as it's rolled for Servine. Hermosillo, and Shilton just thrust it aside. The danger not over yet. And it was Felix Cruz who had two bites at it on the far side. The linesman now flagging. But England was slack at the original set piece, allowing Servine to have the shot. And then a sharp turn here from Hermosillo. An excellent shot on the turn, matched by Shilton's save. And that has got the predominantly Mexican crowd going. Negrete. Butcher was late on Hermosillo, who nevertheless got his foot to the ball, and the referee played a good advantage from the Mexican viewpoint. Here's Servine. And it's Aguirre who loses out to Anderson. Beardsley lets it run, presumably on a call from Waddle. Sansom. Waddle can use the full width of the pitch there. And it's Haitley going in. And Beardsley couldn't fasten on the rebound off a rather tentative goalkeeper. So in the Los Angeles sunshine, it's a bright, open match. Waddle's cross, Robson is there. We can look back now at an uncertain moment for Larios, who was disconcerted there by the presence of Haitley and his own defender Manzo. Hoddle. Wilkins. Servin's header only drops for Beardsley. And with 20 minutes gone, all around me, the crowd thickening. Supporters still arriving. This is reminiscent of the attendances at the soccer tournament in the 1984 Olympics, where this particular stadium wasn't used. The track and field was centred here, but at the Rose Bowl out in Pasadena, the crowds went into six figures. It makes you wonder why football hasn't quite taken off in the United States, but taking off here is Brian Robson. Blocked by his opposite number, Espana, and two number 7s there. And maybe another opportunity for Ken Sansom to launch the long throw. And he's waiting just for Butcher to lope forward. Haitley got there. Here's Fenwick. Now Wilkins. For Waddle. Confident touch in England's passing again. Beardsley always prepared to do the difficult thing and chance his arm in areas where it will hurt the opposition. And the free kick again goes England's way. Waddle. And Haitley! England have scored! Mark Haitley! In the 22nd minute. It's Haitley's first goal for almost a year, and it came from an early cross, and he torpedoed himself forward. He was feared by Mexico a year ago, and he exploits perhaps a traditional weakness of Mexico in the air. Bobby Robson placing emphasis on keeping this unbeaten run going. 9 games before today, taking it into the finals. But he'll be concerned to see Glenn Hoddle down. And the play goes on, but a sporting touch by Aguirre to roll the ball out of play, and Wilkins paid his tribute there and went across to Mexico's acting captain. So this a worrying sight, but very much the good news. Mark Haitley back on target for England. And Chris Waddle showing the value of a winger who'll commit a defender, take him on. He took on Espana and whipped the cross in, and Haitley angled the header perfectly. So play goes on with Hoddle off the field, and it's a facial injury it seems. Peter Beardsley has dropped back into that slot on the right-hand side of midfield, leaving Haitley isolated at the moment. England's midfield substitute, and they have 6 on the bench today, with 5 players being left in Colorado Springs. The one midfield man here is Trevor Steven, although John Barnes is also on the bench and can dovetail into a deeper position, of course. Sevin. Well, Mexico have a tremendous record under their Yugoslav coach, Bora Milutinovic. Under him, they played 17 times here in the Coliseum and never been beaten, but they're trailing now to Bobby Robson's England. While Fred Street checks on Hoddle, with Dr. Vernon Edwards with the glasses there, who is such an important member of this England party, medically and indeed for morale as well. A great character to have around, and they've given the thumbs up to Glenn Hoddle, and he's on his way back. Negrete. And Beardsley takes it away from Aguirre. Haitley to his left. And it was Munoz who made the challenge. So Glenn Hoddle back in full working order. España. Fennick, with, I don't think Bobby Robson still certain as to who will partner Terry Butcher at the heart of defence. Negrete. Hermosillo towering above Sansom. Butcher just got in the way, and Robson with a studious pass for Waddle. Good to see Chris Waddle looking so confident after his tentative display against Scotland, when of course he was under the weather and had lost weight, you might remember, from that illness picked up on England's visit to the Soviet Union. Sevin. España. Miguel España made the goal for Flores last June. It went past Gary Bailey, who was in the England goal that day. And Jim Rosenthal, who's out here with me, has just come back from the England bench to report that it was nothing worse than a bang on the nose for Glenn Hoddle. Here's Negrete. Mexico keeping 2 players forward, Flores and Hermosillo, but again quick to help them from midfield. España. Here's Negrete, who just must have taken his eye off the ball for a second. Wilkins, not so wasteful. Here's Fennick. Haitley checking back to stay on side. Manso going with him. Sansom quickly up. And again Hoddle had raised the foot. Bobby Robson has said that 4 substitutes can be used here today. That's an agreement with the Mexicans. It's not that he wants to chop and change, but he's just concerned about the effects of the heat on any of his team. The weather up in Colorado Springs has been very variable indeed, from gentle warmth to snow, and I understand snow fell there yesterday. The team return to their altitude camp straight after the match. And a corner conceded by Fenwick. Negrete again, the set-piece expert. And Shilton there before Hermosillo. Trejo with a complete miscue, but it turned out for Flores to be a pass that carried some menace for England. More than a touch of luck about it. With half an hour gone, Shilton solidly through the pack to get his fist to the ball, and Trejo, the right back, was lurking for such an eventuality and dragged his attempted shot. It ran on for Flores, who couldn't hit the target. Beardsley. Neatly laid off for Anderson. All the England midfield players in that instant have got themselves ahead of the ball, which is a sign of their confidence. Here's Beardsley, Waddle's coming on the far side, and Hateley looking to jump again! 2-0 for England, and 2 for Hateley. Well, you can talk about varying your style for particular conditions that will be prevalent in Mexico, but the old-fashioned England direct threat still carries some weight. The deep cross to the far post. And no lack of support for England in the Coliseum. And they're delighted with what they're seeing. So Hateley takes his tally to 8 goals in this, now his 17th international, and that's an excellent rate. But here's Servine, and it's a deep cross this time that has Shilton making a catch on the stretch with the ball at its highest point on the trajectory. That's what goalkeepers like to do. Well, Mexico in Los Angeles are very much in their own backyard. But England are the team which looks at home. England waiting for the trainer to be caught on as Peter Beardsley got an elbow in the face from Manzo. It's amazing how often we've seen defenders using their elbows over the course of this season. The camera does tend to pick it up, and Senor Manzo, you're guilty. It's a question really of whether the referee saw it though. Peter Beardsley, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, has already lost a fair number of teeth. And I don't think anyone's more delighted to be involved in the World Cup than the player who made the late bid for selection, and it's going to take more than a stray elbow to stop his progress. Terry Butcher with the ball actually rolling onto that carpet. The original intention was to try and widen what was a narrow playing area. Whether it will actually do that, the players might just form their own touchline inside that green strip. Negrete. Espana involved, Negrete again. Free waiting for Mexico, but no cross arriving. Hermosillo allowed to turn. Flores got up above Anderson. And a weak header by Manzo. And Haitley was just impeded by Servine. And the referee has kept up with play well and saw it. Mark Haitley quite happy to operate with his back to the goal to be the target for balls played early by England, but he likes to turn and have a run himself, and he was setting off in that fashion then. Beardsley looking to turn Cruz, and Haitley sensing a possible hat-trick. But Larios, who's looked tentative on crosses when the ball was in the air, was down quickly as Beardsley cut that one back. Sevi. Flores. Here's Munoz. England have funneled back. Servine, but Hermosillo dropped deep to find some room. But plenty of white shirts between him and England's goal. Felix Cruz. The long leg of Butcher used to good effect. Flores. England really just waiting for the mistake. And looking to spring forward again. It's an awkward bounce for Hoddle, but he made something of it. It went to Wilkins, but I think he was looking for Haitley. Some 9 minutes of the first half remaining. And the excellent news from the Los Angeles Coliseum is a scoreline that reads Mexico 0, England 2. And here's Beardsley. It's 3. And Peter Beardsley gets off the mark for England. A good first half is turning into a marvellous one. Beardsley finishing with great confidence. And Mexico here in some disarray. They tried to play offside, and Beardsley was too cute for that. And with 37 minutes now gone, Peter Beardsley makes it Mexico 0, England 3. Peter Beardsley has a tremendous memory about games he's played and goals he's scored. He'll not forget this one. England have been razor sharp in attack, in taking their chances, and all that's been asked of Peter Shilton at the other end has been delivered just as usual. Well, maybe one or two of you watching were thinking about giving it the first half and then possibly going to bed. I'm sure you'll be staying with us now. Bobby Robson actually made that point to the England players in his pre-match team talk, that they had a great responsibility to the public back home and how they're responding. Hoddle to Waddle. Whoever you talk to around the world of football, as the months have rolled by in 1986, they've been saying, well, we fancy England to do well in Mexico despite the difficult conditions. Well, if England can keep up this performance in the second half, you can be sure all around the training camps of the other finalists, a scoreline like this will mean so much. Here's Anderson. Robson. Hoddle sliding in. And coming through 3 or 4 attempted tackles to try and stop him. Well, Mexico this season have beaten Hungary, they've beaten the Soviet Union, they've beaten Uruguay. But they're 3 goals down to England. España. Now Manzo. España again. Hermosillo and Flores looked offside to me, but the flag has stayed down. Aguirre waiting in the middle, but it's come over him. And Anderson wins the throw. Waddle. Hateley guiding it down, but Beardsley was being obstructed by Munoz. Well, Bobby Robson was describing England's morale as sky high before this game. I'm not sure what's higher than sky high. Wilkins beating Aguirre in the air. Hateley, no suggestion of a foul. Well, it must make excellent viewing at home and excellent viewing from the bench. Bobby Robson almost nodding in agreement. Certainly be a different picture on the Mexican bench. Just 2 minutes on the watch of the first half remaining. England really won't want it to end. Well, I'm sure physically they'd be grateful for a cool drink and just a chance to get into the shade. Three goals and 1 tremendous save from Shilton from Hermosillo that lowered the Mexican morale and raised that of England. Hateley. And once Beardsley not quite close enough in attendance, Flores. Just that extra check on the balance again as he set foot on that carpet strip. Hoddle. Waddle the target of the pass, and Hoddle found him. But I think Waddle was in the end caught in two minds. And it ends as a goal kick. Four changes, in fact, for England here from the team which beat Scotland at Wembley. Anderson for Everton's Gary Stevens, Fenwick for Dave Watson, Brian Robson back for Steve Hodge, and Peter Beardsley for Trevor Francis. Manza. It's been a miserable first 45 minutes for Mexico. Epitomized really by the wasted pass from Manzo. Hoddle's gone on beyond Beardsley. The end of a marvellous first half for England. 3 goals, 2 from Mark Hateley. Larios beaten 3 times. 2 excellent headers from Hateley, augmented by a third from Peter Beardsley. So that's the situation at half-time in the Coliseum. England 3, Mexico 0. More from Ian St John and Jimmy Greaves during the half-time interval, and then uninterrupted coverage of the second half. We'll be back, as they say on the American networks, after these messages. Are you going to cue me? Well, welcome back to the Coliseum, and we can grab a quick word now with Bobby Robson, who's talking to Jim Rosenthal.
Bobby, I know we're only halfway there, but that's a tremendous first half by your team.
Well, it's very pleasing, isn't it? But as you say, there's a lot more to be done. I mean, they will come out being very angry, I would think, and they probably will be being stirred up. But we know how to cope and handle that. Ray Woodlands has still got to sit on the number 22, Negrita, because he's quite a very good little playmaker, and he's the only way back. And if we squash him, I don't think they can get back into the game. So the first 20 minutes is going to be vital.
I know you delight in old-fashioned British virtues. 2 tremendous goals from Mark Hateley.
Well, we've done some altitude trends, so I mean that showed you for the second goal because he climbed very high, didn't it? But Little Beats has done very well too, I think. The 2 strikers have played well, quite marvellous, really. And we've worked hard in midfield. I mean, we've deserved it. We've given here a pretty good performance. I hope we haven't peaked too early.
I was going to say that. Message to people back home who might be thinking of going to bed perhaps after the first half.
Well, stay up. I hope we can give you another 3.
Thanks for talking to us, Bobby.
Thank you.
And so say all of us. Greavesy was talking about the Mexican attitude to this game. They've certainly trained competitively. They've been here since Thursday, but they were out on 1 or 2 shopping trips yesterday, and Larios, the goalkeeper, I spotted coming back with a microwave oven all wrapped up over his shoulder. Whether he's trained something in bringing his purchase back to the hotel, I don't know. But there were other priorities, shall we say. And a couple of the players, Flores and Hermosillo, yesterday evening were in the jacuzzi at the team's hotel playing a game of which of them could keep their head under the water for the longest. I was looking for some medical significance in that, but it was just a bet between the 2 of them. But if they were relaxed about this game, they've certainly had a shock. England with no substitutions at half-time. And a quick check on the Mexican defence. Sees the number 3 Quirarte on, possibly in place of Manzo. And it's a defence that's under threat immediately. A touch from Negrete, the number 2 that Bobby Robson was mentioning at half-time. Flores. España. Here's Flores again. Trejo. There, and Sansom just getting a foot in time. The linesman's flagging for offside. And a second substitution for Mexico. Francisco Cruz, who's a 19-year-old forward, of whom great things are expected. A latecomer into their final choice of 22. He's wearing number 5, and he's up front in place of Hermosillo. But here's Haitley. Robson trying to fill the gap in the middle. Waddle. Negrete, the playmaker from midfield, all with his left foot. Hoddle in the same role for England, but prefers the right. Beardsley, and Hoddle accepting the return pass and trying to sprint past Felix Cruz to no avail. Here's Aguirre. Suspicion of handball by Francisco Cruz. Anderson doing the defending. Negrete! It was a wonderfully athletic effort. He had no right to get his shot on target. The cross from Francisco Cruz was way behind Negrete, and that's Latin extravagance for you, and that's excellent English goalkeeping for you. But in any case, the linesman had spotted an offside right in front of Shilton, but Shilton wasn't to know that. Well, England's footballers enjoying a setting here that meant so much to the likes of Sebastian Coe and Daley Thompson, Tessa Sanderson in the Olympics. Trejo. Kirate. Flores. Touch from Munoz, and Negrete trying to pick his pass forward for España. Sansom. Francisco Cruz. I just wonder whether England have felt the benefits of being at altitude. They've not really been there, I think, in the medical theory, quite long enough to come down to sea level in perfect shape. But there's a spring in their step that's leaving the Mexicans looking heavy-legged. España, 22-year-old midfield player. Ken Sansom taking the throw, becoming England's most capped fullback, 64th here, edging ahead of the great Ray Wilson. Hoddle. Only partly intercepted by Servine. And Haitley. Fenix header. Here's Trejo. Flores. Negrete going ahead of him. Here's Trejo. Now Negrete. And Flores adjudged onside. England stopped and looked furiously across at the linesman. Both the linesmen from the Southern Californian Football Association. It's a big occasion for them, but I must say there were one or two doubts about the referee before the game from the England viewpoint, but he's had a fine match, Vincent Mauro, so far. Been up with play well. Maybe one or two interpretations slightly different, but it has been a match played in a sporting atmosphere. Not too difficult from that point of view to referee. Both teams have been billeted in the same hotel, and this fixture is part of a double bill of football fare in the Coliseum. South Korea take on Peru as soon as this game is over. And here's Francisco Cruz, who's very confident on the ball. Anderson blocks the attempted cross from Aguirre, with Negrete and Flores waiting in the middle. Francisco Cruz again, showing a trick or two to Chris Waddle, who wasn't having any of that. But his nickname actually is Abuelo, which means grandfather in Spanish, because he's the oldest looking 19-year-old that the Mexicans feel they've ever seen. The shot was from Munoz, the midfield anchorman. And that's Bora Milutinovic, who has his own World Cup lucky omen. At the age of 45, he's about to become a father for the first time, the Mexican coach. A miracle, he described it to me. And the baby is due on the day the final start, May the 31st. Well, his players need a miracle to get back into this game, but here's Negrete. A corner for Mexico. Felix Cruz has come forward, the centre-back. And Shilton missed it, but fortune favours England there. It rolled straight back to Shilton off Kirate, who the England players felt left a foot in as he went to challenge, and suddenly the atmosphere of calm has changed. Remember, it is a World Cup, I'm sure, coming up about self-control. Yellow cards will be a problem if England defenders get them, and there was no foul on Shilton. His own player, Mark Hateley, was the problem, but as the ball came back, in went Kirate very late. But no damage on England's goalkeeper. Beardsley, it was a delightful touch, and Waddle almost having the shirt ripped from his back by Kirate. Curving away from Hateley towards the goalkeeper. Well, the only thing that's predictable about Chris Waddle is that he's unpredictable. But if his teammates aren't quite sure what he's going to do, how can the defenders cope? I suppose that's the argument. Francisco Cruz, with his number disappearing, was caught by Anderson. The whistle had already gone. Negrete to take the free kick. Espana is there. Still Espana. Showed a trick then to England's centre line in front of Shilton that left them. ball ran for him first of all, but then that was a clever play off one foot to the other. Shilton there again. Trejo. If the crowd noise has just changed a little for you back home, there's some high spirit, shall we say, in a group of fans not too far away from the commentary position. One or two law enforcement officers have stepped in. And the little affray settling down now, and it was disappointed Mexican supporters who were causing the problem. Sansom. And Beardsley with that low centre of gravity, withstanding Kirate, and then working and harassing against Munoz. Negrete. Picked off by Butcher. "12 minutes gone in the second half. England with 3 goals banked in the opening 36 minutes. Sansom. Here's Espana. Aguirre with Servin galloping up outside him. Flores through the middle. Now Servin, who just got a little close to the player initially in possession. And a corner put behind by Anderson. It's a matter really of England keeping their concentration here. The heat won't help that. But that's a fact they've got to learn to live with in the next month. Anderson. A corner again. Struck very deep. Beyond Kirate and the central defender. Tracked by Hateley. Servin shaping for the long throw, and a complete miscue. And he was a little embarrassed by the flare-up reaction. Sticky palms and the ball slipping away. Robson. As the boys were staying in the studio at half-time, Ryan Robson not over much to the fore. Being judged, of course, by the very high standards that he does set himself. Butcher, Robson, and then Waddle. England trying to push out, but not doing it very quickly. But Butcher was fouled while he was in the air. Beardsley. Sansom. Now Robson. Good shape to England in this attack. 3 waiting for a deep cross. Sansom and Robson closer to Waddle, and then trying to work the 1-2 off Hoddle, and it was a stretch for Robson in the shot. Well, our commentary position is very much in the midst of the crowd. The broadcasting booths here used by the American announcers are way up high, and the ageing eyesight grateful for a sighting closer to the fray. Servin. Here's Aguirre, challenged by Brian Robson. Espana. Flores. And it runs away, as it has done, from Mexico after the first 20 minutes, when they began with a little bit more coordination than England, but were then unsettled by the aerial power of Haitley at one end and the agility of Shilton at the other. Sansom squeezing a pass forward as Trejo came in very late. Waddle. Here's Negrete. Francisco Cruz chasing through the middle, and Shilton having to come and play it when he wanted it to run behind for the goal kick, and he's got to scamper back. Felix Cruz with the cross, met by Anderson, and a little nudge spotted by Trejo on Haitley. If you're wondering about our capacity to hold on to a 3-goal lead, England under Bobby Robson have never conceded 3 goals. You have to go back 6 years to the very day to find the last time that happened to England, when Ron Greenwood's side were beaten 4-1 by Wales at Wrexham. Servin. That rotational play from Mexico's midfield again. Negrete peeled away, Flores filled the gap, and now Negrete taking up the wider position, testing England with the cross. Butcher came up with the answer at the expense of a corner. And Shilton with his view somewhat masked. Trejo, and Shilton very grateful, I would feel, that that came close to him through a pack of players, and it was almost an instinctive grab. España. Beardsley was nudged, and it was enough to get Bobby Robson onto his feet. Haitley, and just more contact with the flick, would have angled it towards Beardsley instead of to the goalkeeper. Felix Cruz. Kirate. This is more the slow tempo that we'll see in the World Cup finals. Keeping the ball, playing to feet, making sure that the pass is crisp and accurate. But in the end, it's got to be penetrating. Negrete, most capable of doing that for Mexico, and he almost released Francisco Cruz, who was tugging away at Butcher's arm. Hoddle. And it is perhaps the longer pass that does waste energy, with front players having to make up ground to try and make themselves available. Munoz. The free player is Servin. Aguirre darting into the middle, and Flores coming late. And Kenny Sansom, who's the first to joke about his diminutive appearance, 5'6", used every inch of it to make the header. Negrete again looking to swing the corner in. And Shilton impeccable in his handling. He just sensed that if that had beamed in from an in-swinging corner at the other end, that there might have been joy for England. Beardsley timed his run well to stay onside. Hoddle. Waddle should keep it in play. Sansom. Beardsley. Over Haitley this time, away by Munoz. And as Haitley did make contact, the linesman was flagging for offside. Down on the bench, Bobby Robson has made a move to get Kerry Dixon warming up, and John Barnes. And here's Francisco Cruz. It's an important block by Butcher. The cross finally does come in. Munoz, Servine. Crisp work from Hoddle. Haitley is 5 yards offside on this occasion. So Kerry Dixon, who picked up a couple of goals as a substitute against South Korea in that training game on Wednesday. John Barnes limbering up as well. Terry Fenwick is no more fierce competitor, I would think, in the England ranks than Fenwick. If he's not in the team, he's not averse to asking the manager why he's been left out. Strong northeastern attitude, not diluted by the time he's spent in West London. And here is another Geordie, Peter Beardsley. And yet another Waddle. Sansom. Aguirre for Mexico. Straight to Butcher. And Haitley. He probably won't want to go off on a hat-trick if Dixon is the replacement for him. Munoz. Servine has certainly been a way forward for Mexico in the second half. Francisco Cruz has added another dimension, and Negrete catching England square with a little clip ball over the back four, which Servine had turned into a pass. And Brian Robson went down, which always is cause for anxiety. It was taken up cleverly by Negrete. England wanted offside, which wasn't forthcoming. And then Servine over that shoulder again. And that could spoil England's party here. Brian Robson off the field, and what everyone feared might happen in the World Cup finals itself, has it happened to England's captain, a recurrence of the shoulder dislocation. We'll bring you news of it just as soon as we can get it from down at the pitch. Meanwhile, Kirate with the long throw for Mexico. And it's offside against Aguirre. So 4 substitutes, the permitted number. And here we have Gary Stevens for Robson. That's the Tottenham Gary Stevens. A man described by the England manager as a bit of everything, and his versatility will be called into play again. And it's Mark Hateley and Chris Waddle who come off for Kerry Dixon and for John Barnes. That's the facts of the matter, but it's the medical diagnosis that we're waiting to hear. So Fred Street and Bobby Robson, and you can see our man Jim Rosenthal there waiting for news.
Time to the game for everyone, number 19, John Barnes, and number 21, Kerry Dixon.
The incident happening with just under 20 minutes remaining, and England 3 goals to the good, on their way, it seems, to another victory. But are they? And one doesn't want to be too alarmist here, but there is the concern that we might be off to the World Cup finals without Brian Robson. Aguirre. And the first news is good news. A tweak in the shoulder region, and the precaution only to bring him straight off. But it's not being unfair to Brian, I don't think, to say that he still isn't quite the player that he wants himself to be, that we all want him to be. Fennick. Here's Barnes, straight away filling the Chris Waddle role. Broken up by Trejo, now España. Mexico themselves are looking to make what will be their 3rd substitution, 2 made at half-time. Negrete. España. Aguirre filling the central attacking role at the moment. Negrete. And the shot from España maybe could have taken it on a yard or 2 further as he tricked Butcher, but in fact the gap was closing. It was being a little harsh on him, and he let fly when he could. Shilton hangs on again. Sevi. España. Francisco Cruz, and it was a good cross really, and he deserved better support. Everyone flat-footed for Mexico in the middle. England can make one further substitution. Trevor Steven hasn't played in any of the training games since he's been out here, one of the late arrivals of course. And it's Alex Dominguez who comes on for España. Dominguez, who was used as a substitute against England last year. Another midfield player. But the spate of substitutions coming in the closing phase of the game, and all happening really in a group. Sometimes a succession of substitutions does interrupt the flow of proceedings, but that may not happen here. Beardsley just a little slow to pick himself up after a tackle from behind. But still calling for the ball, although there was no way Hoddle could have found him on the far side. And here's Francisco Cruz. Dominguez is in the middle if he needs help, but the 19-year-old is foiled again by Shilton. But that's the talent of a veteran goalkeeper denying the precocious talent of a young forward who could have a major role to play in the World Cup and might force himself into Mexico's starting lineup. Francisco Cruz, who is one player who has been playing club football in Mexico this season. Anderson's header, it's another corner. England a little slack at the back when Francisco Cruz got away. Negrete again, Anderson again. Two Arsenal fullbacks conferring. Deeper this time, more to Shilton's liking. But Francisco Cruz got away from Fenwick, and he was cutting back onto the left foot that he prefers, and England were trying to get back. He set himself for the shot, and in fact it was deflected by Anderson, it seemed. Dixon, it's a good turn. Terry Dixon scored twice here against the United States last season, at the end of last season. And after a rather barren run in league games towards the end of this season, eye for goal is there. It's certainly been a match full of incident, which I'm sure has kept you entertained. As back home, you've moved from Saturday night into Sunday morning. And the outline of the Colosseum, always a reminder of the Olympics, of course. The second Olympic Games staged here. The first was in 1932. But I think only Brian Moore remembers that one. Here's John Barnes. Stoppage allowing the introduction of Trevor Stephen, and it's Ray Wilkins with under 10 minutes remaining, who slowly makes his way off. As ever, a figure of influence in midfield through personality as well as play. Well, the last ball that Trevor Stephen kicked in anger was in the cup final. And Sansom, he does feel that he ought to get more goals. He's gone through a complete season with Arsenal, not missing a game, league or cup, without getting on the score sheet, and he's only ever scored once in now 64 internationals for England. The sense of adventure is there, but not the final shot. Trejo. And Kirate in some discomfort, but so too Beardsley, who fell across him and might have just tweaked the ankle that he damaged in training during the week. Negrete's back heel. Francisco Cruz. England picking up one or two little injuries in the final minutes here. Anderson now in trouble. The drag back was in fact his undoing. He lost the ball because he was caught.
Your attention, please. When we leave together after the match, please leave to your gates 1, 4, 11, 19, and 28. Once you leave your history, you can't come back in, so remember that.
Well, England have made their 4 substitutions, so Viv Anderson, it seems, will have to stay on. The plan for the England party is to get a flight out of Los Angeles only about an hour and a half after the final whistle. The time difference works against them going back to Colorado Springs, where there's another hour difference. But they will be back in the team hotel around midnight, and waiting for them there will be their wives and girlfriends who flew out yesterday. Anderson mobile enough to stop Francisco Cruz. Negrete. The target really for England now is to keep a clean sheet. They're 5 minutes away from it. They lead by 3-0 if you've just joined us. The scorers Mark Hateley twice in the first half with headers, and Peter Beardsley, his first goal for his country. Negrete over the ball. Flores is there as well. And it's Flores who takes it, and it's a corner. Negrete has tested England's rear guard from a number of right-wing corners in this match. When they've gone deep, Shilton has been there. When they've been shorter, Viv Anderson has cut down the space at the near post. But that was a little more awkward in that it got past Anderson. Kerry Dixon lending help to the cause. Shilton this time can only get a left hand to it. Servine played it back, and Kirate, no goal. A foul on Shilton, and it wasn't dissimilar from an instance in the game between the two countries almost a year ago when Viv Anderson had a goal chalked off for jumping with the goalkeeper. So one day it goes for you, one day it goes against you. But was it a foul here by Kirate on Shilton? The referee said so. And that was a push on Anderson by Francisco Cruz. So England still have their castle unbreached. And Shilton, his 80th international, he'll look back on it with understandable pride. Only 3 Englishmen have played more, and they've both gone on to reach the century. Bobby Moore, Bobby Charlton and Billy Wright. So England just a couple of minutes away from victory. It might interest you to know that they get £100 per man, all the 22, for appearing or being in the squad here for each game. And there is a win bonus of £300 per man. So it's not big money. The pride of representing the country is still very much to the forefront. Francisco Cruz. And Anderson held him up in terms of delaying the cross, but had to be careful in front of the England fans not to bring him down. Viv Anderson, who gave away a penalty in Tbilisi. It can only be consolation for Mexico now. In addition to the monetary rewards I was telling you about, of course, there are undisclosed figures for progress in the World Cup. And that's Aguirre. And Shilton can smile. Dixon. Trevor Stephen, who was a scorer in that 5-0 win over the United States here. Barnes. We're into the final minute, and as Bobby Robson said to us at half-time, there was still work to be done. Dominguez. Here's Flores. Francisco Cruz staying onside ahead of him. He's offside now. Anderson. Munoz. Sometimes there can be lessons from defeat, and Mexico will obviously be hoping to learn from their experience here, which has been a humbling one for them, on a ground where they've done so well in a succession of World Cup preliminary games. We're into stoppage time. England can just use up time and savour their success. And they've avenged their last defeat. An unbeaten run for England extended to 10 games, 8 of which have now been won. A final score to thrill Bobby Robson. England 3, Mexico 0. The supporters who have made their way here and the Los Angeles English community seeing a triumph in conditions which will help the belief that victories can be achieved in heat, even though Monterrey's heat will be much fiercer than here in Los Angeles. It's Mexico's first defeat in this, their second home, in 18 games here under Milutinovic. And it'll be a very happy England party who get back to Colorado Springs tonight, where they'll be reunited with their wives and girlfriends.